Hello and welcome to New Filmmakers Los Angeles in partnership with Movie Maker magazine. My name is Danny DeLillo and we are here at the South Park Center and I'm here with Pearl Gluck with her movie, The Turnout. Let's take a look at a clip.
You said that you only used just to stay awake. And 2 years later, you're still using.
Working really hard at it.
What the fuck, Jimmy?
Your whole life on the road is a party.
Anybody looking for some good company tonight?
I'm not high.
This kind of stupid shit stoned people say.
I think right now the most important thing for you is to be there for your daughter.
Everyone knows she's trailer trash.
You know what that's about, right?
I'm so grateful you're here. I really am. Thank you for coming all the way over from the East Coast to be here. And thank you for your film. I can't tell you, I'm so excited to interview today because it was an incredible film. But for those that haven't seen it, tell us a brief synopsis.
Well, first, I want to say thank you to you. Not only for your entire team that does the New Filmmaker LA monthly program, because it's great to be here, but also this is incredible. And I love that there's the passing on of the tradition to people in high school, and it's just constantly engaging the conversation of how film can be effective.
Oh,
so thank you for that. I'm really glad to be part of it, especially this film.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I've done a couple of films before, but this one especially is a bit of a mix of social action and the impact of filmmaking on people's real lives, the way that happens behind the camera, but also we did it in front of the camera as well. Because it's a film about a trucker who discovers that a girl at his truck stop is being trafficked. And as it turns out, because of external situations, we were forced to make a creative decision, which I think in the end worked very well for the film, which is that the film actually has a trucker playing a trucker. He has 3.5 million miles under his belt before he actually decided to get in front of the camera. And all his life he was told that he looked like Sam Elliott, so now he's actually in front of the camera. But it was very effective for him to be in the film because it caused him to think a lot about how he had, and so many of the people he knows had thought about prostitution in America. And it kind of opened his eyes, and so he was able to bring that to the role, especially since the film targets people who perceive themselves as bystanders, who feel like they don't have anything to do with the sex trafficking issue in the United States, who can't really do it, like we're hard, you know, we don't cause the harm, we're powerless in changing it. So this film kind of says, well, hang on, what if you started to look at things this way? You could see how powerful you really are. And it does it with the kind of everyday hero of a trucker. And then the women who play the survivors in the film, or they're victims in the film, but they're actually survivors of elements of trafficking here in the United States. So whether it's the deeply tied roots of trafficking here, which is connected to the demand of commercial company, as it's called in the industry, and now more than ever, it's tied to addiction and drugs, and the way that the predators now function is they use the vulnerability of people who are either addicts or are lonely, or are looking for someone to tell them that they're beautiful, that they have a place, and then they slowly work their way in. So whether it's through the demand side or the victimization side. So this film is uncomfortable to watch because it looks at these things that we know we kind of play a small role in different ways in our lives. But at the same time, my hope is that that layer of discomfort will lead to action and go, wait a second, if it's making me uncomfortable, it's because I have a little piece in this. Actually, I can do something about that. You know, and so that was the hope. So it's great to be in this kind of New Filmmakers environment with this film, because I think the film really is at its core activism as filmmaking. And for those who don't know the New Filmmakers, I think history is deeply tied to indie filmmaking. Filmmaking is activism.
100%.
Through was it Jonas Mekas that started the series back in New York. So for me, this is a major coming home. Even though I'm from New York, being here in LA with the series, with your series, it's just great to be here.
I'm so grateful you came to us, and your film was one of the most difficult films I've ever watched, but one of the most important films I've ever watched, and one of the most important films I think you can watch possible. It's so real, and I didn't know the information you shared until you told me afterwards. And you know, this is going on in our backyards, and it's unbelievable.
It's right outside these windows.
It's right outside these windows, and you know, for me, I think everybody in America and beyond should watch this film, because this is happening, and it's not happening the way that we think it's happening.
Agreed.
And
we can do something about it.
And we can do something
Yeah.
about it. You know,
It's actually quite easy
It
if you
is.
wanted to, to do something about it. It's a
Yeah.
little tougher on the higher ups.
Yeah.
But as a lot of survivors have shared with me, people on the ground like ourselves, if they knew more, would do more.
Yeah.
And a lot of these people who are saved from the life, as it's called, it's because somebody knew something and said something and called the hotline and allowed the trained advocates to deal with it.
Yeah.
But the other part that's real is the locations, right? So we shot at a truck stop in Mineral Wells, West Virginia.
Wow.
None of the truck stops really wanted to let us shoot there because it's so uncomfortably real. The fact that there's prostitution there, nobody really wants to talk about it or admit it. Again, I don't fault people for being lonely and needing commercial company. It's just about making sure that the person in your truck or wherever actually is there on their own volition, that
Yeah.
they weren't coerced in some way
Yeah.
or gotten high and
Yeah.
then dependent on their quote unquote pimp traffickers.
Yeah.
So these are ways in which we could become activists even when we're lonely.
Yeah.
And, you could work from the inside.
Yeah.
So anyway, so this truck stop, it's incredible. The woman, Phyllis, is in it as the owner because she's the one who gave us permission to be in there.
Wow.
And as it turns out, Phyllis, and you're welcome to show a scene if you want, but
Yeah.
Phyllis, actually, the conversation she has with the trucker is the very first conversation I had with her when I met her. She looked at my
Wow.
rings and she was asking me about my rings. And so I was like, hold on. And I was like
Oh,
quickly
great.
writing down what she was saying. 'Cause-
Script advising, yeah,
and
love
that was her
Yeah.
way of connecting. I used that conversation because she connected with me on that level.
Yeah.
As two women, I had her connect with the trucker on that level as a man and a woman. Just to
Wow.
kind of mix things up a little.
I
And so
love
he looks
that.
at she looks at his rings.
Yeah.
And talks to him about it, and it's just great because it's I think it breaks down a lot of barriers.
No, it does.
Right.
No,
And she was amazing. She was a trucker before she owned the truck stop, so
Wow.
she knows what it's like on the road.
she knows what it's like.
And
that-
as a woman.
Right. And what's so fascinating to me is that I can't believe that this cast had no acting experience. Of course, they're very authentic in the fact that this is part of their world and their lives. How was that casting process for you? You know, you're dealing with very sensitive subjects as well for those victims of sex trafficking and that world, and then obviously a trucker to actually go in front of camera. How was that experience for you as a director?
Well, first I had to get over the fact that I wasn't going to cast professional actors because of the location issues. Like I was moving, and so we had to make a quick decision. Do we stick to locations? I'm glad we did because obviously that's what felt so authentic for you.
Perfect.
And then, don't forget that I was dating the trucker at the time. So in addition to the fact that he's a trucker, playing a trucker in a film, he also has to deal with his girlfriend telling him what to do on a regular basis.
You made him a star though, so I
Thank
think
you.
he can deal with it. Yeah.
Let's hope so.
Yeah.
But we talk about women behind the camera and women in the director's chair. I think that really took it to the highest level, and I think that was a very interesting process. But the casting process was interesting because the woman who plays Nevaeh, which is
Yeah,
actually
Nevaeh.
heaven spelled backwards.
Yeah, I
and
love that.
I got that name. I didn't even come up with that name.
Wow.
When I interviewed one of the child advocates in the Athens County area, she said that one of the most popular names of girls that were suffering from domestic sexual abuse was Nevaeh.
Wow.
She said, I don't know why, Pearl. It's very strange and super dark that heaven spelled backwards, Nevaeh, is the name that keeps coming in here. And I said, okay, that's the name of the main character
Wow.
who's being trafficked, inter-family trafficking, which is a huge problem in our country, actually. And so I named her Nevaeh, and then the composer, Chris Ratty.
The music was great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think so too.
So
I think
good.
he did an amazing job, and so he and the woman who sings all the songs, her name's Natty Lou Race. They just connected, I guess, like you did, and of course, like I did, to these characters and wrote the song "Heaven Spelled Backwards," which is the title song of the film.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was just when they came in with those lyrics, I was like, wow.
They were very
They
affecting.
just wrote it, and
very
so that's
affecting
the name.
music, and it was.
So back to the
wonderful.
casting process. So we decided that the main character is Nevaeh, that she would come from Athens County, that she would understand questions of poverty, underrepresented voices, because she's from that world, and the kind of forgotten in our country, which is again right outside our doors, and people who aren't being given opportunities in education or opportunities, period, and are being kind of it's harder and harder now because of what's
Yeah.
happening in our country, and
Yeah.
you know, the 1% is so grabby, and
Yeah.
it makes it so difficult for the middle class to be able to do something
That's right.
about the edges and the
Yeah.
margins. And I think education is so undervalued in this country. I mean, we could talk about sex trafficking, but you cannot actually leave it in a vacuum.
Yeah.
It's so deeply tied to
Mhm.
why people are turning to addiction and the opioid crisis in this country, how it's connected to lack of educational opportunities,
Mhm.
how the poor are undervalued,
Mhm.
and ways in which certain things are getting cut. So anyway, this is what we were looking at, and actually Athens County is one of the poorest counties in the country. So
Wow.
it's not just in Ohio, so it's one of the top 5 poorest counties. So when we were doing casting, we were also trying to find a location for our crew to live and be able to afford it. So somebody answered our ad, and it turned out it was a teacher. Speaking of the educational changes that need to happen, he's one of those people, and he said that he had helped with other teachers, this one woman, be able to buy her first pair of sneakers, I guess, or I guess whatever you wear to play basketball. So I don't play basketball. I'm a New Yorker. I look out the window and I say, is it safe to go out there? Is it too cold, or am I staying in? No. So anyway, he helped her, and he gave me her number, and I called her, and she was too old to play Nevaeh, but her sister agreed to do it. And a lot of their true stories are in this film, including when the mom comes to get them from the truck
Ugh.
with the cop. That's what happened to Regina.
Oh my goodness.
And you know, what I learned from child advocates is that this is how the abuse works so well.
Yeah.
Children want their parents to be okay.
Yeah.
They don't want to get them into trouble.
Yeah.
And they just want to make their parents happy.
Yeah.
And so even though they're being abused, they don't want to hurt their family. They're in the end, more than anything, they don't want the younger sister or the younger brother to get abused next, so they're willing
Right.
to put themselves out there. So a lot of these dynamics were explained to me by Regina and her sister Robin, and now they're in the education system. Now they're working
Isn't
to
that-
help
oh, that's
people from their
fantastic.
community. And so she agreed to be in the film. Her story was confidential at the time.
Yeah.
And then as the film came out, this is part of the process, right? Is
Yeah.
when it plays and the effect that it has on people, Regina decided to open up and share her story.
Wow.
And so now her story is part of it as well. So that's how the casting process, so she agreed to be in it. She was petrified to be in front of the camera, but I think the cast and crew were so awesome to her.
Oh, just had. I
Jim
mean,
was amazing to her.
Yeah.
We did a lot of trust exercises, and I sent them off on their own to come up with their own backstories, and it was an amazing community behind the camera. So
I
that
felt your cast were just, I mean, I just couldn't imagine anyone else playing those parts. They were just, you know, they were so invested. It was so
In so many
real. It
ways.
was so real. It was actually like, I mean, I obviously found out this was real for all of them, but, you know, it was just such an experience that I think sometimes we're afraid of being in a position of being watching something
Yeah.
on a screen that's causes us discomfort.
Yeah.
But how important it is, and the platform that the moving image provides for that as well.
And there's hope at the end.
And there's hope at the end.
Not only because of the story, but because of the people in it.
Yeah.
They are survivors.
Yeah.
And they're people that are going to move this movement forward because of the work through the arts.
Through the arts.
That they decided to do.
What was the experience like now, obviously at NewFilmmakers Los Angeles, and having it in front of an audience, and then how has it been with the audience reaction to your film as well? Because, you know, your film just sits with you, you know, it does.
That's what I
and
hear.
makes you want to make change. It
Good.
lingers on and makes you more aware of society. How has that reaction been for you? How was it last night? And what did you want to get from the audience?
So last night was interesting. I mean, every screening's been amazing.
Yeah.
People always come up to me after, and then I hear from people a few days or even weeks later, like certain scenes are still sitting with me. What can I do to help, etc. So we're just starting. So we are going to set up a website where people can know what to do next. Last night, a woman came up to me and said that her friend works in prisons, where so she wants her to see it, where they help people coming out of. That's the other part of our problem, isn't it? We have a prison system,
Yeah.
and it's so quick to
Yeah.
put behind bars those
Right.
who struggle, and they struggle because it's our fault in some ways. And so, you know, this is a program that addresses people that are coming out of prison and having them. She said a lot of them started to open up to her friend, who's an advocate, about how they were trafficked
Yeah.
and how a lot of what they ended up doing as crimes is what they were coerced into. So Barbara, who's one of the survivors in the film, who plays an advocate at the end and helps Nevaeh, she is now teaching in the prisons.
Wow.
Yeah, and she's talking to these women and saying, look, I know what it was like for you in the life. I know the crimes you committed. I committed them too. And here, I understand why you've done them. I've done them for the same reasons too, whether, they get them hooked really young and now I'm dependent on this person, or all the other ways, or the threat, again, a threat of a younger family member being told, the threat of shame and so on. Or death. I mean, these threats can be really serious, and they can be very serious internally. That makes it, it really, they're predators.
Yeah.
They're predators for a reason.
Yeah.
So when she talks to these people who are in prison, she was only talking to the women. Well, she's starting to talk to the men. And so this woman who came up to me after the screening, we were talking about how, if we can start pushing this awareness in the culture of those who claim to be the demand, in other words, the Johns, that would be great, because a lot of people don't want to be part of the system and they don't know that they are.
Yeah.
So if they become aware of it through Barbara and through the work this woman from last night is doing,
amazing.
It is amazing.
Yeah.
We showed it with the FBI in Pennsylvania, in Erie,
Wow.
Pennsylvania. That was incredible.
Wow.
So they talked a lot. I think what's uncomfortable, I imagine what's uncomfortable, 'cause I'm very close to the film, but I think what's uncomfortable about watching the film is how close to home it is.
Yes, that's exactly.
It's just, we just feel responsible. And
Yeah.
a lot of advocates that I've shown it with talk about how these are the unheard voices. These young women that are in these homes and nobody wants to talk about interfamily trafficking. It's so ugly
Yeah.
that it kind of points a finger at us a little, and we're responsible.
does.
And so the FBI agent talked a lot about that, how that's predominantly what we see in our country. There's always a family member that somehow, whether they're aware of it or not, allowed it. Speaking of casting, the woman who plays the mom in this film,
Yeah.
I asked her, how are you going to play it? How are you going to do this? How are you going to come to a place of authenticity as a mom who traffics her own kid or allows her kid to be trafficked? And she said, Pearl, that's so easy. You really don't know what it's like out here. I said, you know what? I bet you're right. I was, brought up in a very privileged and comfortable environment. I had my own struggles, but, I did not come from this. She said, well, in one of the trailers right next door to mine, one of the girls I went to school with, back when I was in high school, her mother was pimping her out. And her way of making it okay in her mind was that she had nobody watching out for her
Yeah.
when she was on the streets. And now she's watching out for her kid. So it's really important to look at that cycle of violence, because it does perpetuate itself.
Yeah.
The tiniest little, tiniest little abuse, it's like, okay, I overcome what happened with the uncle or what happened. No, that perpetuates more violence and the cycle of violence. And I said to her, so how are you going to do it? And she said, well, this woman would give her daughter condoms, so that made her feel better about her being out there, that she was protected. Well, there's that scene in the film where she gives her daughter a condom, and frankly, I think it's one of the more disturbing scenes.
It really is. No, I mean,
she loves her. She gives her a hug and a kiss, and she says, "Be careful out there, baby girl." And that didn't come from me. That came from women who've been through this.
It's a reality, and I think the great thing of what your film has done for us is that it's every single person who will watch this will be better equipped, more knowledgeable, more educated about what's going on our doorstep, and also hopefully part of that change as well, which is important. What is next for you?
So we're going to push this film out, both on an educational and I guess entertainment level, because there's power to that too.
Yeah.
But I was really inspired by doing this, and the way that it ended up happening, and it's kind of like, what do they call it, like by mistake, how it got discovered.
Yeah.
It's coming to me. Age, by the way, is an interesting thing with the brain. But anyway, so I got inspired by this penicillin moment, that's what it's called, where you kind of end up discovering something you actually love by mistake.
Yeah.
So I come from a documentary background. That part's not so super surprising, but the hybrid approach. So I'm now working on a local story near where I live, where there was a flag war about a few miles where I am, which is in central PA. Where this guy would not remove his Confederate flag from his front lawn.
Oh, wow.
And so other people ordered peace flags, and put those up, which really annoyed some other people. This should sound very current.
Yeah.
And so there was a huge flag war in 2015 where all these
Yeah.
flags went up in this tiny town.
Yeah.
And so I
remember
thought
that, yeah.
this might be a really powerful backdrop
Yeah.
to look at what's happening in our country today.
Oh.
Looking at something like this, and then stuff goes down, certainly
love
post
it.
Charlottesville and so on. And I'll obviously want to cast actors. I've been working a lot more with
Yeah.
actors now. It's the same process though, really
Yeah.
looking at their history, finding their place of authenticity in the story, the
Yeah.
human connection.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, we've been doing some documentary research, and I think some locals are probably going to be involved.
I hope so too.
Including Chris Ratty, who wrote the music for this film.
Oh, very good,
so-
because that needs to keep the same team
So
there.
we're
'Cause
building.
It's fantastic. I love it. I'm so thankful that you made this film, and it's not very often you'd say everyone needs to see this film, but everyone does need to see this film. It's so powerful. It's so. It's also comforting to know that someone out there is really recognizing that and utilizing the power of movement image to do that as well.
Yeah.
That a place where people can actually find relation and understand the world a bit better. And so thank you for making this film very
Thanks
much.
for showing it.
No.
That's everything.
Yeah, you're everything, and you're such a talented filmmaker, and I can't wait to see much more of your work again, Paul, so thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Paul, everybody, thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.